Hi everyone. So in this video, we're going to understand the concept of castling. Why is castling really important in the game of chess, and how you can castle in a certain position and when you cannot really castle. So let's have a look. So we'll start with the basic development moves. Let's say e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. It's known that you should develop your knights before bishops, and this is what both sides do. And now bishop c4. So to castle, you have to meet three basic criteria. One of those is that there should be no pieces between the king and the rook. So right now white has moved his knight and he has moved his bishop. So he has vacated both the squares and now there are absolutely no pieces between the king and the rook. So that enables castling. So the second criteria is once you develop your pieces, there should not be any sort of attack by your opponent pieces on any of the intermediate squares. So for example, your opponent's pieces should not be controlling these two squares at all, uh, because then your king kind of would be traversing these squares and that would ideally be an illegal move. So for example, bishop c5, d3, knight f6, and let's say you play knight h4 here, d6 and f4. So now if you after let's say black plays something like bishop d7, if you think as white you wish to castle right now, you cannot really do that because the black bishop is controlling the g1 square and your king basically is going this side, so he's basically traversing this square. He'll basically land up on that square in the end, so and he will be directly under check. So that is not considered a legal move. The third thing is that your king yourself should not be in check. For example, you play d3 here and your opponent plays bishop f2. So in this position, you cannot really castle because your king is under check. So you have to deal with the check first and then you can decide to castle. The last principle is that your king should not have moved for you to have the option to castle. Basically, for example, even in the last example as we saw, when black played bishop f2 check, you took, let's say black plays knight f6, and you go bishop e3, d6, and now you just go king e1. So you basically are in the same position as you were before, and let's say black castles. So can you really castle here? You cannot, because your king has already moved once and it is not allowed to castle now. So of course, instead of king f2, you can play something like rook e1, castles, and king g1. So you have kind of artificially castled here, but you cannot really castle in one move once your king has moved. So we're going to revise all the four principles. So first of all, your king does not have to be in check. Second, there should not be any pieces in between your king and rook. Third, there should not be any influence on any of the squares in between the king and the rook. So these two pieces should be perfectly free. And if you follow all of these principles, then automatically you can castle. Now, castling is considered to be a very important move, and we're going to look at why. Usually, if you decide to keep your king in the center, that is not really good because in most cases, let's say you develop the pieces and castles, bishop e3, bishop b6, queen d2, d6, h3, bishop e6, bishop b3, d5. So basically, white is refusing to castle here, while black has comfortably tucked his king. So takes, and a few exchanges ensue. And after both sides develop the pieces, you can see black is already threatening e4. And let's say white plays c3, he is still adamant that he's not going to castle. Suddenly e4, and now white will be wishing that he had castled because after pawn takes, queen takes, uh, white's king is under check and the queen is also under attack. So the only move white has is to bring his queen. He cannot really play to e2 because then it will checkmate. So he has to play queen e3 to save his queen. But then black just plays something like queen a4, and after rook d8 by white, he just plays knight takes d8, and the queen protects the rook, and the queen is pinned. So basically, white will be losing his queen for black's rook, and this is dead lost for white. So he could have avoided all of these troubles if he had just castled. Even right now, if he had just castled, he would probably be just fine. And that is the reason castling is very important, because you put your king in a safe zone and then you place your rooks in the central files. where you can use them effectively. So this was a video on castling and why it is important and in which situations you can castle. I hope you liked it. If you did, do subscribe to the channel and check out other content. You'll find a lot of interesting videos there, and stay safe.